Okay, so if you're a creative professional, you've probably been hearing a lot about AI and your job. And let's be honest, it can be pretty stressful. But what if I told you there's a way to flip that anxiety on its head and turn it into an actual actionable strategy? Today, we're diving into a framework that does just that. So, this is the question everyone's asking, right? We kind of think there's this, magic threshold that AI has to cross before it can do our work. We see it as a technology problem, a question of capability. But here's the thing. What if that's completely the wrong way to look at the problem?
And this is where the whole thing clicks into place. See, the real danger isn't that some super smart AI is going to outthink you. It's that parts of your job become so routine, so predictable, that they stop being a job and they just become a feature in a bigger machine. And that shift, it's happening way more quietly and way more predictably than you might think.
All right, so let's get right into it. Section 1. We need to understand what actually causes a task to be automated. And spoiler alert, it's probably not what you've been told. Okay, get this. The number one thing to understand is that work doesn't get automated because AI suddenly becomes a genius. No, it gets automated when the work itself becomes so standardized, so clear-cut, that a machine can do it over and over again reliably. So the change isn't in the AI, it's in the task.
So what does standardized really mean? Well, it boils down to these four key triggers. First, ambiguity goes down. It becomes super clear what the right answer looks like. Second, it's easy to verify. You can look at the output and say, yep, that's right, or nope, that's wrong. Third, the rules stop changing all the time. They're stable. And finally, the risk of getting it wrong decreases. When all four of those things happen, a task is basically shaped perfectly for an AI to take over.
All right, so if that's the trigger, how does it actually play out? The key is to realize automation isn't like flipping a switch. It's more like a slow fracture, breaking your job apart piece by piece, layer by layer. Let's look at how that actually works. So I want you to think about your job not as one big thing, but as 5 separate layers. And if you can see these 5 layers, it's like having a roadmap for the future. Because I promise you, they do not all automate at the same time. Okay, so check out this table. It breaks the whole thing down. Way down at the bottom, you've got generate, just cranking out tons of raw options, and format, which is all of the boring stuff like resizing and exporting. These are the first to go, almost always. Then you move up a level to select, which is actually choosing the best option. Above that is verify. That's checking if the work is on brand, if it's legally safe, all that stuff. And then way at the top, the holy grail, define. This is where you frame the actual problem that needs to be solved in the first place. So you see the path, right? It's almost always the same. First, AI takes over the making, then it moves to the choosing, then it starts helping with the checking, and only way, way down the line does it even begin to touch defining the problem. Once you understand this flow, you can stop just reacting to every new AI tool and start making a real plan for where you need to focus your skills. Okay, this next part is super practical. How do you actually see this happening? Because this whole transition isn't just some vague feeling. There are real, tangible signals you can watch for in your daily work, way before your boss ever says the word automation. All right, signal number 1, your rework rate starts to climb. Just ask yourself, are you spending more and more of your day just fixing, tweaking, and correcting things? Even if you're not using AI yet? If the answer is yes, that's not a coincidence. That's a huge sign that the workflow itself is quietly changing under your feet. And here's why that matters. The moment your job stops being about original creation and starts being about just managing a stream of corrections, the business case for automating that process gets stronger every single day. Basically, your old creative process is becoming a bottleneck, and the company is going to look for a way to unclog it. Okay, signal number 2 is something the source calls rubricization. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but what it means is simple. It's that moment when people start saying things like, hey, can we get a checklist for this? Or we need to write down exactly what good looks like. Sound familiar? And you have to get this next part, it's so important. Documentation isn't just documentation, it's pre-automation. The second you write down the explicit rules for what makes something good, you're literally writing the instruction manual for a machine to do that job. You're taking your gut feeling, your craft, your intuition, and you're turning it into an algorithm. And that brings us to the third and final signal, approvalization. Another fun word, right? This is when the meetings start. Suddenly there are official conversations about who signs off on work that an AI touched, who's on the hook if it goes wrong. If there's a problem, who's the human we escalate to? And once you see that happening, the game has changed. The work has officially shifted from being your personal craft to being a formal organizational operation. And what happens to standardized operations? Well, they get automated. Okay, so we've seen the triggers, we've seen how jobs fracture, and we know the warning signs to look for. Now for the big question, the most important part of all of this. What do you do about it? How do you not just survive this whole thing, but actually come out ahead?
It all starts with a massive shift in the question you're asking yourself. The old question is, what should I hand off to AI? That's defensive. The new strategic question is, okay, when this task inevitably moves to AI, what part of this system do I still own? You see the difference? It's a shift from being a task doer to being a system designer. And it turns out there are 3 specific structures you want to own. First, you own the constraint structure. These are the guardrails, the policies, the do not cross lines for the AI. Second, you own the judgment structure. This is the rubric, the evaluation criteria. You get to define what good looks like, making you the ultimate judge of quality. And third, you own the accountability structure. Who approves things? Who's responsible? You own that whole framework. The grunt work might go to the AI, but when you own these 3 structures, you've actually upgraded your job.
All right, let's wrap this up. The choice in front of you is actually pretty clear. The whole goal here is to make sure your complex, creative, valuable role doesn't get boiled down into just pushing a button. So here's the bottom line. If you stay put down in those generate and format layers, just cranking out options, your job becomes a feature, and your value gets pretty shaky. But if you make a conscious effort to move up the stack, to own selecting, verifying, and especially defining, your value actually goes up as the AI gets more powerful. You're not competing with the machine anymore. You become the human intelligence that guides it. And I want to leave you with this final thought because it really sums up the entire mindset shift. AI doesn't just take jobs. That's not how it works. What happens is that standardized work naturally flows toward automation. It's like a river flowing downhill. A smart designer doesn't try to build a dam to stop the river. No, they read the current, they get ahead of it, and they own the structures, the channels, the policies, the rubrics that direct its power. That is how you own the future of your work.